We are at the point in the offseason where there's really just nothing going on in the hockey world, and this offseason especially I feel like has been very quiet on the trade front, so I thought now would be a good time to start making some videos where we look ahead towards next season. And today I'm going to be doing a video that I've done every offseason for the past 5 or 6 years, and that is try to predict some breakout players for next season. As always, I want to know what you guys are thinking, so if there's any players that you feel like are in for a breakout season in 2025 that I don't cover in this video, then be sure to let me know who those players are and why down below in the comments. If you end up enjoying this video, please remember by the end to leave it a like. It definitely helps out the videos a ton, and it's the best way to let me know that you enjoyed. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this all year round, be sure to hit that subscribe button. So with that all being said, let's go ahead and start off with the first player on my list, the first of 2 Buffalo Sabres that we're going to talk about in this video, Jack Quinn. A player who had his sophomore season cut short, appeared in only 27 games for the Buffalo Sabres this past season thanks to 2 long-term injuries, one an Achilles injury that required surgery last offseason, which forced Jack Quinn to miss the first 32 games of the year, and then also suffered another lower body injury later on in the season that would also require surgery. Despite all that, Jack Quinn was still very productive in the 27 games he appeared in this past season for the Sabres, finishing with 9 goals and 10 assists for 19 points. He made the most out of his ice time, was very efficient, and actually finished the year leading the Buffalo Sabres in even strength points per 60 minutes. He is a dynamic offensive player that I imagine is going to take on a much bigger role with the Buffalo Sabres next season, and if he stays healthy, I would not be surprised at all to see him break the 30 goal mark and finish with around 60 to 70 points. Moving on now to the next player on my list, we have Jake Sanderson, defenseman for the Ottawa Senators. Now, Jake Sanderson is already a fantastic two-way top pairing defenseman, logged over 23 minutes a night with the Senators this past season, put up career highs in goals with 10 and points with 38, so it's not like he would be breaking out of nowhere, but I feel like everybody knows there's definitely another level or two that this guy can get to, and what we've seen from him throughout his first 2 NHL seasons is really just Jake Sanderson scratching the surface. I think we're going to see a significant increase in Sanderson's point totals. You have to imagine he's going to be the guy quarterbacking the Senators' top power play unit, and with all the talent that the Senators are capable of putting out there on the man advantage, I have a hard time believing their power play is going to be as mediocre as it was this past season, which should lead to more points for Sanderson. His defensive game is already very good. The underlying numbers have looked great throughout his first 2 seasons in the NHL so far. The Senators have a legit #1 defenseman in Jake Sanderson, who I think this past season already established himself as the clear-cut best defenseman on the Ottawa Senators. And next season, I'm expecting him to establish himself as one of the better defensemen in the entire league. Next up, we have the one and only goaltender on my list. This one is pretty self-explanatory. Joseph Woll of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Joseph Woll was given a 3-year contract extension by the Toronto Maple Leafs this offseason. It won't kick in until the 2025-26 season, and it will carry a cap of $3.67 million. So based off of that, it looks like the Toronto Maple Leafs are hoping Joseph Woll is going to be the guy in net for them for at least the foreseeable future. Now, they also brought in unrestricted free agent Anthony Stolarz, which I think was a fantastic signing. 2-year, $5 million deal, a cap of $2.5 million per season. Stolarz was one of the best backups in the entire NHL this past season behind Sergei Bobrovsky, and should be a nice safety blanket to have in Toronto behind Joseph Woll in case injuries become a problem for Joseph Woll again, because they kind of have been throughout his professional career so far. But when Joseph Woll has been healthy, he has been very impressive for the Toronto Maple Leafs pretty much every stint he's had in the NHL so far throughout his career, especially in this year's playoffs. The dude was lights out in the few games he got into in the first round against the Boston Bruins, and a young, relatively unestablished goaltender performing that well on such a big stage is a very good sign, and I imagine his performance in the playoffs against Boston is really what instilled a lot of confidence in the Maple Leafs front office to go out there and give him that 3-year extension. Moving on now to the next player on my list, we have Tommy Novak of the Nashville Predators, who has had back-to-back seasons with Nashville where he's had at least 17 goals and 43 points. He's been very productive for the Nashville Predators over these last few seasons, despite playing relatively limited minutes. Up until this point, he has yet to get the opportunity to play a consistent role in Nashville's top 6. I think a big reason for that is because he is a centerman that doesn't have a strong defensive game and isn't great in the faceoff dot. However, I think that all changes next season, because looking at the Nashville Predators depth chart right now, I think Novak likely slots in as their #2 center and could get an opportunity to play with the likes of Jonathan Marchand Marchessault and Steven Stamkos, players who the Nashville Predators brought in during free agency. When it comes to offensive weapons like Marchessault and Stamkos, you want to have someone playing between them that can make plays offensively, and Novak definitely can. They may have to shelter his minutes a little bit, likely give a lot of the D-zone starts to guys like Ryan O'Reilly and Colton Sissons, but I feel like at least to start the season, it's definitely worth giving Tommy Novak a look in the Nashville Predators top 6, see what he can do playing with talented guys like the guys that Nashville brought in free agency, because throughout Novak's first 2 seasons in the NHL, he has been insanely productive playing in a limited role with guys that aren't necessarily the most skilled. If he sticks on a line with Stamkos and Marchessault, assuming the Predators decide to keep O'Reilly, Forsberg, and Nyquist together because they were so good this past season, then I would not be surprised at all to see Tommy Novak pop off for 60 to 70 points. Moving on now to the next player on my list. This one is a bit of a long shot, definitely the most bold breakout pick in this video, I would say. Adam Boqvist of the Florida Panthers. Adam Boqvist was a surprise addition to free agency this year after being bought out by the Columbus Blue Jackets. He ended up signing a 1-year prove-it deal with the Florida Panthers worth $775K. He will still be a restricted free agent upon expiry, and after the departures of guys like Brandon Montour and Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who signed with Seattle and Toronto respectively in free agency, I think there's an opportunity there in Florida for somebody like Adam Boqvist to carve himself out a role, playing probably sheltered minutes at 5-on-5, but maybe get an opportunity to play on one of Florida's 2 power play units. Adam Boqvist is uber talented offensively, has a ton of skill. His offensive game has never really been a problem for him at the NHL level so far. It's been staying healthy and the defensive side of things. That's why I like the fit of him in Florida so much, because the Panthers have such a strong team defense. It's not like they're going to rely on Boqvist to go out there and shut down the opposing team's top players. And like I previously mentioned, I think there's roles on the power play up for grabs in Florida, especially when it comes to defensemen who's going to be quarterbacking the power plays. And I would not be surprised at all if Adam Boqvist is able to win himself one of those roles, and if he stays healthy, I could see him having the most productive season of his career so far as a member of the Florida Panthers. Next up on my list, we have Kirby Dach of the Montreal Canadiens, who only appeared in 2 games for the Canadiens this past season, and he had a couple of assists in those games, but ultimately had his season cut short after tearing his ACL and MCL. Now, missing an entire season and coming back from an injury like that is not going to be easy, so maybe it is a little bit bold to have Kirby Dach in this video, picking him to break out next season, because I don't think anyone would really blame him if he started off really slow this upcoming season. But I decided to include Kirby Dach anyways, because I think he's a guy that this time last season a lot of people were saying, okay, next season Kirby Dach is really going to break out after a really productive first year in Montreal. In total, Kirby Dach has suited up for 60 games as a member of the Montreal Canadiens and has 40 points in those 60 games. Solid production. He's still only 23 years old. It feels like he's been around for a long time, but this is a guy who made the jump immediately into the NHL after being taken 3rd overall by the Blackhawks in 2019. He still has a ton of room to grow, and hopefully he's able to stay 100% healthy this upcoming season for the Montreal Canadiens, and if he does, I would not be shocked at all to see him have the best year of his career yet. Moving on now to the next player on my list, we have Bobby McMann of the Toronto Maple Leafs, an undrafted late bloomer, 28 years old, but this past season was really his first full year in the NHL, and it still wasn't even technically a full year. He played in just 56 games, but in those 56 games, despite only getting 4th line minutes, Bobby McMann was very productive, finished with 15 goals and 24 points in those 56 games, and it's not like his shooting percentage was unsustainably high either. He finished the season shooting 12.7%. This is a guy who has legit goal scoring touch and ability, is a great shot. He's also a very effective forechecker and plays a strong, responsible defensive game, and it's looking like he's going to get a massive opportunity to start next season playing in Toronto's top 6, likely with John Tavares and William Nylander. Looking at the Maple Leafs roster right now, I definitely think Bobby McMann is the best option to fill that role on the left wing in the Maple Leafs top 6, along with Matthew Knies, who likely slots in on their first line. And if Bobby McMann is able to stick in the Maple Leafs top 6 with the goal scoring touch and ability he showed playing 4th line minutes this past season, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see this guy score 25 plus goals. Is he the next Zach Hyman, like a lot of people are labeling him as? I wouldn't go that far, but I'm definitely expecting him to be a pretty key player for the Maple Leafs this upcoming season, and he definitely has the potential to give them some insane value considering how low his cap hit is. And for a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are obviously very tight to the cap, that would be massive. Moving on now to the next player on my list, we have Bowen Byram, a defenseman for the Buffalo Sabres, who was traded to Buffalo in that 1-for-1 swap for Casey Middlestad around the trade deadline. This past season was the healthiest biggest year Bowen Byram has had in the NHL up until this point in his career, which was really nice to see. Played in 73 games between the Colorado Avalanche and the Buffalo Sabres, and I think looked especially good down the stretch for Buffalo after the trade. We saw his ice time increased by 2 full minutes once he got to Buffalo. His offensive production went up as well, and overall just looked like much more of a difference maker as a member of the Sabres than he did the first chunk of the season with Colorado. It seems like the move is really good for Bowen Byram, and I'm expecting him to really pop off next season for the Buffalo Sabres. Having a young nucleus on the blue line of Rasmus Dahlin, Owen Power, and Bowen Byram is just absolutely insane. And now finally, finishing out the video with the last player on my list, we have Pavel Dorofeyev of the Vegas Golden Knights, their third round selection, 79th overall from 2019. Dorofeyev is coming off of a pretty productive rookie season with the Golden Knights. Unfortunately, it was cut short due to injury. He only appeared in 47 games, but in those 47 games, scored at around a 20-goal, half-point per game pace, and he's a guy that I think Vegas is definitely going to be relying upon this upcoming season to step up and play a much bigger role and really help make up for a lot of the offense that the Golden Knights lost, with Marchessault, Stevenson, Amadio, and Carrier all leaving in free agency. I think he likely starts off the season playing in Vegas' top 6, being centered by somebody like Jack Eichel or Thomas Hertl, and that'd be a really good opportunity for Dorofeyev. He's got a lot of skill, and he showed that this past season despite not getting a ton of minutes. Don't be surprised at all to see Dorofeyev really emerge and establish himself as a legit top 6er this season for Vegas. So that is going to wrap up today's video. Those are some NHL players that I believe are going to break out in 2025. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I always want to know what you guys are thinking, so if there's anybody that we haven't talked about in this video that you think is going to break out next season, be sure to let me know who those players are and why down below in the comments. If you made it all this way to the end of the video and you ended up enjoying yourself, please remember to leave a like. It helps out the videos a ton, and it's the best way to let me know that you enjoyed. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this all year round, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all again soon.